Hi, and welcome to SCW here on YouTube.com. Thank you for choosing the channel and choosing the video. Please subscribe right now. Leave any comments in the comment section. Please like and share the video as well. It is live Q&A format, but first and foremost, it's more of a debate, I guess, going to go on. We've got quite a couple of big talking points we're going to talk about, including Sasha Banks and Naomi walking out of Monday Night Raw last night. Also going to give our opinion on what should happen with the tag team championships for the women going forward as well. But before we dive into that, I'm going to welcome our guest on today, none other than NX Steve. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm very good, Steve. Thank you for having me on once again. And so it's always a privilege being on your channel, man.
It's always a privilege to have you on the channel as well. So thank you for taking the time out to be a part of this things here today. And like I say, it's a big topic, this one, really, with Sasha Banks and Naomi last night. And Non-Stop Wrestling Chat already in the chat and saying that he's looking forward to hearing our thoughts on the situation. So I suppose before we go and really give our opinion on what we think, we probably should go on what we think we know for now, because obviously a lot of information has seemingly come out from multiple different sources. So I'm going to try and give a few shout outs already. The likes of Fightful have given their take on it. PW Insider have given their take on it. Dave Meltzer's give his take. And Tom Collier as well has done a fantastic video update this morning on his YouTube channel as well. So for those who haven't checked it out, I do recommend they go and do so at some point. But I'll try and give you a brief overall of what those have reported, and obviously from what we've got from WWE on their official statement on the situation and what we got through Raw. So the situation as we sort of know it is that it seems that a lot of talents arrive a number of hours before shows, and obviously it was presented to Banks and Naomi that they were going to be involved in a six-pack challenge. WWE in their statement said this was advertised. From my understanding, it was only advertised actually when we went on air. I didn't see on Twitter, Instagram, anywhere like that over the weekend. So
it was literally the first thing they advertised when the show started.
Exactly, yeah. So I wouldn't say it was like, something that was major, but it had been put on our screens. We were told about it. But obviously, as the show was sort of going live, that's when they were supposedly walking out of the door. Now, from sort of a lot of inside sources, I think a lot of this comes down to creative issues. Apparently, Sasha Banks and Naomi would prefer to focus on being the women's tag team champions. If we look back to earlier in the year, for example, Sasha Banks obviously was expected to go against Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania for the SmackDown Women's Championship. She was expected to win that championship as well. Of course, this was before Ronda Rousey was brought back. So almost as a alternative idea to give a meaningful program, they suggested about the women's tag team championships and Naomi as well. And they said, but they want to make those titles mean something. They want it to be a big deal and give them a proper division going forward, because there wasn't a real division. So we had WrestleMania come along. We had 4 tag teams involved with that. Obviously, we had new women's tag team champions. Apart from the champions, only one other team is still together. Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan are feuding with each other. Of course, we've had Zelina Vega and Carmella sort of break up as well. Carmella on Raw was on her own last night. Almost seems to be reuniting with R-Truth at this point. We've had Naomi and Shayna Baszler go for what has been arguably a nothing program really going on. Obviously, Sasha Banks and Naomi retained the championships on SmackDown last week. There wasn't even on the premium live event WrestleMania Backlash. Now we're going in further forward. It looks like there was a budding tag team starting with Doudrop and Nikki ASH. They were also going to be part of this six-pack challenge, of course, on the night. But the belief was that Naomi was actually going to go over. That's per Fightful. She was actually going to win this six-pack challenge and was actually going to go on to take on Bianca Belair at the premium live event Hell in a Cell. Now, what does that leave for Sasha Banks, do you ask? She was going to be actually finding a way to become number one contender herself and was going to go and take on Ronda Rousey, a person, of course, she's already given a spot up for and now would have to put over. Now, these two wanted to focus on tag team wrestling. There's been multiple different occasions where they've been pushing for this, wanting more done. And Vince McMahon, because Sasha and Vince are meant to be very, very close, Vince has been responsive to what's been requested, what's been wanted. Changes have been made to shows, which I think has upset a lot of creative, a lot of producers, to the point that when the concerns were put yesterday and the plans weren't changed, that it was going to be the case of how it was going to be, producers were upset. And I think there's been arguments backstage with producers, with Sasha and Naomi, and it got to a stage where neither side was going to buckle. Banks and Naomi would said they would have to do what they were told. There is also rumors going around that Naomi was going to be pinning Sasha in the match and were going to be going head to head. those rumors have changed since that it was going to be Nikki ASH who was going to take the pinfall in this match. But obviously, not enough focus on the women's tag team division, not enough focus on what they're doing with Banks and Naomi, with what they want to do with this team. It looked like that personally that the tag team was going to be dropped almost for the next 3 or 4 weeks, and they're probably going to focus on it heading towards Money in the Bank. And perhaps it's been one thing after another. It's not the first time Sasha Banks has taken a break from WWE and walked away. Of course, remember back in 2019 over those tag team championships as well after dropping them to the Iconics. So I think the first and foremost thing we need to take from this is what was your immediate impression when you learned about this information? We'll go more into what WWE had to say themselves as a quick propaganda statement released shortly after.
I mean, initially, I didn't hear about anything about this until this morning, until when I woke up. I watched Raw last night, and I was just in general a bit confused as to why you would advertise the six-pack challenge right at the start of the night if you knew it was never going to happen. So I just found it really, really strange. It's like almost like you're trying to advertise, like WWE tried to advertise this, or they're trying to make this story-wise. Why didn't they just not advertise a six-pack challenge initially and just go with a one-on-one? I just thought it was very strange. I mean, I don't understand why they couldn't have just still done a gauntlet match and still involved Nikki ASH and Doudrop. Not that there was anything wrong with Becky Lynch versus Asuka. It was a really good match. It's just a shame it was reduced to 7 minutes on a Raw taping. It's just overall just a very, very strange scenario. And it's, like I said, with everything that's come out, and obviously we don't know, we can only go by essentially Chinese whispers, hearsay, and what everyone says. And it just seems like Sasha's got to the point where she's just annoyed at how these tag team titles are being booked. I mean, yeah, you can understand her point, especially from when her and Bayley were tag team champions and they lost at Mania to the Iconics a couple of years ago. It just seems like ever since these titles have been introduced, they've just never been used correctly. I mean, you remember these titles were initially supposed to be across all 3 brands, and then they ended up having NXT have their own tag team championships, which is probably the dumbest move that they've done. Because again, if NXT 2.0 is now a thing, then surely having the tag titles across all 3 brands would make more sense. You get more of this new talent coming through, interacting with the likes of Sasha Banks and Naomi. But yeah, like I said, this tag division's been it's just been a bit of a calamity and a bit of a joke, really. Like it's every week there's a tag team that's been thrown together with no story. It's just a case of, we're going to team up and we're going to have a tag team title match. There's no build to anything with it. I can't actually even remember the last time I think that I see these women's tag team titles defended on a pay-per-view. It's just a very, very strange situation.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, outside of WrestleMania, I don't think there's been an occasion where we've seen them on a premium live event at this particular moment. You made a great point as well about the NXT, because it just limited the division completely, where they could go to all 3 brands. That wasn't a possibility as well. So there are lots of defining factors here. What's wrong with this women's tag team division? Of course, we're going to probably touch on later on where we think these championships should be scrapped in general. But of course, going on to the basis then of what we've seen so far, and just say quick shout out, by the way, to everyone that's in the house. We've got Noob and Cohen House, Too Sweet Carwin House, Martin Carrillo, Ed Fries, Non-Stop Wrestling Chat, Eagles Lair, hope I said that correctly, and Martin Carrillo already there, and West Coast Popcast as well there. So lots of people in the chat. We will get every chat up, by the way, as well. So don't worry to those that I have not put on the screen as of yet. But obviously, one comment that's come up here from Non-Stop Wrestling Chat, which we'll bring up now, says that not just getting upset with WWE creative, but talent as well. Now, this is from some of the response then that we've got from WWE, because they've pretty much, I'm paraphrasing it because I've not got the whole speech in front of me, but obviously they've been branded unprofessional. They had all hours of the day that they could have planned and sorted out this match. Apparently, they didn't want to work with 2 of the talents in ring. Now, of course, when watching Wrestle Talk earlier, it was suggested it could be Oscar and Becky. Obviously, that's obviously the 2 single stars going for the main championship. Obviously, Doudrop and Nikki ASH are the team that are trying to build together. So that's probably more speculation as well from the part here. But at the same time, obviously, to not wanting to work with people when they have been in the ring with them before seems a bit strange. But obviously, there does just generally seem to be a lot of concern that the effort and the work they're trying to put in to make these championships mean something Obviously, they're not getting that. And I think that that's where a lot of this upset and unrest has come from. Dave Meltzer went and said there could be some contract issues as well. And multiple sources as well have stated that this is almost like, it feels like a final straw issue. It's not a case that this is just something that happened last night at Raw. This has been brewing for a while. There has been discussions that have been back and forth with Vince and Sasha and Naomi over creative ideas. That's probably upset creative teams. So this isn't something that's just new and just fresh. And it's interesting because those championships were placed on the table to John Laurinaitis when they left the show with their suitcases. So obviously there's a lot of frustration, a lot of anger. I wonder if it can be resolved. But as it has been stated here from West Coast Popcast, Becky Graves and WWE's statement last night were petty, especially since Becky was throwing tantrums and nothing was said. Obviously, according to PW Insider, there was one source that Becky was given credit for her actual interaction with Adam Pearce, because a lot of the stuff last night was booked on the fly. Obviously, I'm assuming Graves probably got it fed in his ear to say stuff about unprofessional. It was mentioned a few times on air yesterday. What was your take with WWE's sort of quick response? Because it felt to me, if I'm going to be honest with you, that they wanted to beat the girls to the punch of something being said. And to brand unprofessional, now, understand we don't know all the full details, but they don't usually do that with other case scenarios. And as it's a company that's doing a scripted storytelling, story program, why is there a situation that that they felt they need to have to go real with this to its audience when they could have gone to a kayfabe story?
This is purely an insurance policy for WWE, because it almost feels like something has happened backstage. I mean, it was only a couple of weeks ago that you had someone, who was it that brought up the whole thing about NXT dressing like Mandy Rose? Ember Moon saying about and it's that name again, John Laurinaitis. And it's just, I don't know, I'm not purely saying it is because of John Laurinaitis, but his name seems to be attached to a lot of things that are going wrong lately in the women's division. And it's just not a positive look for the company. And I think this is purely just an insurance policy for WWE. I think that they want to get this out there to make it look like they haven't done anything wrong. Obviously, while Naomi and Sasha are still under contract, they're not going to say anything. It's just, like I just said, it's a very, very strange, because it's like, I don't know what it is. I just find it really mind-boggling. Like, this is like when John Moxley left, and the WWE released that statement about like wishing him best in all his future endeavors because his contracts had run out. But since then, we've had other wrestlers leave where their contracts have expired, and no one else has got a future endeavor. And it just seems like one of these weird things that WWE's doing. But again, with the women's tag team division, this is just going back to the creative with this. It's just, this is the problem with the brand split, is you've got such a thin division split over two shows, essentially looking at, I don't know, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 on each show, and you're expected to make a tag team division out of it, and you've got 2 world titles. It just doesn't make sense. Like, this is why I wanted this brand split to win, because you'd get a lot less like sort of main, like top title stories, and you can start doing stuff more with the likes of the Intercontinental, the United States Championship, the women's tag team titles, because at the minute they're nothing championships. They're not represented on it. I mean, the 24/7 title is getting more love than the IC title at the minute, and that's just criminal. I mean, the last 2-3 weeks, there's always been a 24/7 title segment before the main event, and it's like, that's like third hour premium spot there that the 24/7 title's getting, and Ricochet can barely even get on TV with the IC title, and it's the same thing with the women's division. Unless you're in that main event scene, it just seems pointless. Any of them being there and doing anything. It's weird creative. And like I said, with this statement, it just feels like WWE are just trying to cover themselves for something or someone.
Absolutely. And of course, I'll give Tom Colley was the source for this. He has actually gone on Twitter and said that WWE do not want Banks and Naomi leaving. So like you said, it could almost be a pressure play. They're no way probably going to get released from their contracts. So if it's another situation of where, they legitimately walked out, they're just going to be sitting at home. They're not going to be going anywhere else. Like I don't think it's even worth a discussion of AEW Impact anywhere like that. No one could afford Sasha Banks to begin with, and I just don't see that WWE would release her or Naomi at this stage of the game. They're obviously looking for pressure to try and bring them back in. Obviously, you mentioned obviously with Sasha Banks as well, looking to try and do what she could for the tag team division. She was actually spotted at NXT not so long ago. It was actually a post put on social media. Obviously, wanting to work with the likes of Toxic Attraction as well, which of course NXT has its own tag team division. You've already mentioned there with the tag team titles, but there is always the flip side as well. And Eagles has put a comment up here, and Eagles. I do apologize. It's taking a bit of time to get your comment up here, but we're going to get it up now. Is this a work that's absolutely awful in a terrible PR? This is a hot potato. Everyone is talking about it. Ringside Wrestling, Wrestling Talk, and other big wrestling websites are on this. Yeah, of course, it's been a hot topic all day everywhere. If you've gone anywhere on social media in the wrestling world or even on YouTube, I'm sure everybody has been talking about this. But obviously, this is my take on it still, if you don't mind me, before we go to you. Like, to be branded unprofessional and some of the things that have been thrown in their direction, yes, I suppose it's creating where everyone's talking. It's creating a buzz, but a reputation like that can stick. And surely those two people being professional workers wouldn't want that tagline given to them. So for me personally, storyline or not, whether it's trying to gain interest in that, there are other ways you can brand interest for those women's tag team championships, not in the way that this has been done. So for me, I don't believe it's a PR stunt, but do you think that it could be a work in any way?
No, I wouldn't have thought so. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. Well, then again, we've spoken before about Lacey Evans and how my fear is that they're booking this current Lacey Evans character as a heel, which I find very strange, and it's a big PR risk. So it's like a 3% possibility that this is a PR stunt, but I think this is more to do with frustrations with creative. The wrestlers trying to do the best of a scenario with what they've got, but it just gets to the point, I think, where they're just sick of it now. Like we said a little while ago, I can't remember the last time I saw the women's tag team titles defended on a premium live event. I think they're just upset with what they've been given. Then as well with the fact that one of the sources that come out today is supposed to be Sasha's close friend, who's the one that said about that apparently it was supposed to be Naomi pinning Sasha. Obviously, I don't think anyone knows if the source is verified, but yeah, what kind of story is that for a tag team if the one of you is going over? I mean, like Wrestle Talk was saying earlier. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't Wrestle Talk. It was Cultaholic I was watching, and they said the only way that would have possibly worked was if you'd have had it reversed on Friday with Sasha pinning Naomi to go on to face Ronda, which, to be fair, sounds like an actual interesting story, but obviously I don't think that was the plan for Friday. So yeah, I think it's they're them looking at it like, what kind of a dynamic is that for a tag team where you've got one of them pinning the other one, and yeah, it's all very, very strange. And like I said, I don't think it's a PR stunt. It's a very strange one, and it really is skeptical. I mean, the problem is with tarnishing, especially Sasha. Sasha's got apparently Hollywood offers. She's worked for Disney on the Mandalorian show, so she's like, if she was to leave WWE tomorrow, she'd be fine and she could get work. Naomi, I know she's been in a lot of the WWE films, but I really think she would struggle. But then Naomi has had a history of bad creative. Like, the best thing she ever did was that, do you remember her custom SmackDown title where she had the neon lights on it?
Yes,
and she got in major trouble. She did an interview about it and said that she got in major trouble for it because it was never agreed by WWE, and she was in hot water for it. So I don't know. It's just, I mean, Sasha has pulling power. Sasha can walk back in tomorrow and everything will be fine. But I worry for the likes of Naomi because, with no disrespect to her, but she's not as big a draw as Sasha Banks.
Well, it's a fair argument there. I mean, obviously there had been rumours as well. I think Jimmy also been quoted in a interview of some sort saying that perhaps he wouldn't be surprised if she joined the Bloodline at some point. So, I mean, there definitely was plans and creative and ideas there. I obviously wonder how it's going to get resolved. I also wonder actually with regards to the match as well, like why it couldn't have been a fatal four-way if the other two walked away. They actually took Nikki ASH and do drop out of the match altogether. So that seemed a bit weird as well. But I mean, looking at things, it's a very strange scenario. I mean, I don't want to commit to one side or the other of who is right or wrong until there's more information out there. A lot of it does seem to be hearsay at this stage. I know it probably seems like we're sitting on the fence here, but one thing that can't really be ignored at this point, and I will want to go back to the comments in a minute, but I think this question needs to be addressed now, is WWE have made this where it's an issue on TV, and if it's not a work or anything like that, how do you bring these women back on TV? Because you need to address this now. You can't just bring in and pretend nothing's happened and go la-di-la and put them back in a tag team match and all the rest of it. There needs to be some substance to this going forward in a storyline narrative of explanation for the people that are watching, because they literally have hung these two women out to dry.
Yeah, unless this is like the craziest heel turn ever, and like they plan on bringing them back. Like, do you remember the whole R-Truth Miz storyline where they were getting arrested every week because they were breaking, they were interrupting everything? Unless they're trying to go with that dynamic as a PR stunt. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, I think the more I say, this goes back to that statement they released. I mean, I think it was more of an apology to fans, because obviously I think that they had been announced to be appearing on the show. But again, it's 50 of one, half of another. Like, you really don't know. And how they bring them back from here, I don't know. Like I said, unless it's a major heel turn. But again, I'm not like happy with WWE's creative with this division. So I have no belief that it will be a PR stunt and it will be something like that. So again, it's very, very strange.
It is very, very strange indeed. We'll go back to our comments in the meantime. And obviously, we're going to try and get as many of the comments up now as we can. If you've got other questions and other topics in wrestling as well, feel free to throw them in. This is a Q&A format after all, so we will answering questions certainly for a little while anyway. Martin Carrillo does say that the women's tag team titles are just carrying trophies in the women's division. It was a good idea to bring them back in the time, but unfortunately the tag division really isn't important in WWE. So I think this leads to the next question. Obviously, those championships have been placed on the table with John Laurinaitis. Obviously, the Sasha and Naomi may not be back in WWE TV for a very, very long time. What do they do with these women's tag team championships? Do they scrap them? Do they do a tournament? Do they bring women from NXT up? I mean, what's the thing to do here? Because it does feel like at this point that the women's tag team championships haven't quite worked. The only time they've really felt important in any way is when, I suppose you would argue and say, some of the top talent has held them. Sasha Banks being there on 2 occasions. The first, of course, being with Bayley, maybe Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross back in 2020. Other occasions, these belts haven't had the same weight of importance.
No, I mean, I'm looking now. I'm on Pro Fight DB, just trying to sort of look back at the championships, and yeah, they've not been as far back as WrestleMania. They've not been defended on a pay-per-view event since Mania that I can see. Anyway, I could be completely wrong. I mean, it's like I said, I don't understand why they would bring them into the business if they're not going to book them correctly. But then again, this is this thing about so many titles, and it's not like they don't have enough TV time to do stories for all these kind of things, but it just seems like they're putting all their eggs in one basket with Roman Reigns, and everything else on that show at the minute just doesn't seem to be of any importance. So the IC title is on Ricochet, but he hasn't been on TV, and the IC title hasn't been defended in over a year on a premium live event. The United States Championship, I feel, is now starting to get some sort of relevancy back in it now that the fact that Theory has it, and Theory's been booked really well. The women's titles, yeah, fine. The fact that there's 2 of them is a positive, because then you've got at least 2 different women's stories on TV every week for booking wise. But yeah, this tag team, the women's tag team title is essentially like the 24. Well, not to say it's not even booked better than 24/7. Say 24/7 gets booked better, and the 24/7 is a prop title. Like, it's there for fun, and it's a comedic relief for 5 minutes for a 3-hour show. But yeah, like I said, when like my earlier comment, I don't understand why they split the NXT one up, and it would have been a way for 2.0 to interact with his roster. And it worries me, because I would like to see a women's tag team title division on the shows, but depending on how this all comes out, this could be the end of it, and they could just scrap the titles altogether. They could, I mean, the only way unless they just completely get rid of the titles, or unless they do a whole unification match with the NXT ones, and then they just stay on NXT permanently. I don't know, but yeah, it's not looking good for the women's tag team division.
It really isn't, and obviously, as we say, it comes down to the fact that this wasn't really, I think, a creative idea. Like you say, Sasha Banks Bailey pushed for these championships. Feels that Sasha's really had a heart in the idea of making this division something big for so long, and it's just not working out because it's just not on the priority list of WWE's radar. Even when someone of her name value still is trying to put her eggs in that basket, it's just not playing out the way that perhaps Sasha Bailey and fans of tag team wrestling and women's wrestling want to see. And of course, like you say, if they're not going to be treated properly, maybe it is the right thing to scrap them at this point, because you're not sure how you get over a hurdle like this. But the thing that I'd feel sorry for is the NXT women's division. Like you just said, that they've got a tag team division. Why are we trying to build some women's tag teams down there? We've got Toxic Attraction, we've got Kaden Carter and Casey Caranzaro. I'm not going to do a new name because I can't remember it. We've got they're trying to establish things down there as well. We had Dakota and Raquel. I know that's now no longer a thing as well, but it almost becomes to a point of like, well, what's the point of building it down there if it's not going to mean anything when they come up? Because obviously, Toxic Attraction, in my opinion, I think would have been no, dream match is probably a stretch of the word, but certainly would have been a very good rivalry for Sasha and Naomi when they were called up. So obviously we're not going to get that now, obviously, so not for the time being anyway. But I think you're right. And I think perhaps maybe scrapping them might be the right thing to do. But an alternative idea that we've had here from Non-Stop Wrestling Chat, let's have a singles women's title. Maybe give them the WWE EU Championship. We need something to change here. So, I mean, alternatively, if we're not going to get tag team championships, why not have a mid-card championship? Because at that point, we don't really get tag teams treated well. A lot of them are thrown together. People that are not ready. If you want to be facing a Ronda Rousey or Bianca Belair, let's look for, I suppose, if we look at the SmackDown Women's Division, we look at perhaps a Shotzi, Aaliyah, Xia Li, those sort of people maybe would benefit from a mid-card title, give them experience like we used to see in the old days. Someone would win the mid-card title, then they'd get the experience to go for the top title. But I suppose maybe one thing you could say on the contrary is what you just said moments ago about the Intercontinental Championship.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to see a women's mid-card title, but for me, this brand split needs to win because you split a division so thin across two shows, and it doesn't help. The only, like I said, the plus is that both of them are top titles, so they have to have stories going forward. They're going to feature every week on TV. Yeah, if they were to essentially scrap one of them, bring in a mid-card title, it's just going to look like the Intercontinental. It's just going to be it's going to end up like the tag team titles are now, just not relevant. The tag team titles are there for me personally to build up two stars at once. So if you have a established team like a Naomi and a Sasha Banks, put a Leah and a Shotzi together, put them together, make them tag, have a series of matches or whatever, but then build them to a standard. But then the other problem that they've got is that because the division's so thin, I don't want to see them tag the same every week. It's just I don't want to watch these four compete or have a variation of these four competing, like kind of what Riddle and Jey Uso are doing at the minute, or Jimmy Uso. It's Riddle versus an Uso every week, and it's like, okay, just get to the end point, get to the story here. But I'm like, there's other superstars that you could use in those variations. But yeah, the tag team titles is just, like I said, they're there to build up two stars, because then the two star, like if they don't win the titles, or if they win the titles and they lose, and then there's a whole breakup dynamic, and there's so much that can play from tag team wrestling and story wise, and it just doesn't get done. It's very, like I said, the Riddle and Randy Orton storyline from a tag team perspective is probably the best story I've seen in a while, probably since the New Day and the Usos were feuding a couple of years ago. Like the tag team title seems to have more relevancy now because they were in the same spot, just tag team titles, just on the show every week. They just put them out there and then don't do anything with them. But then because they're now tied in with Roman Reigns, who is the biggest name on the card at the minute, there's relevancy to this tag team division. But my whole worry is that whether they do unify them or not, what happens when Roman leaves? Then what happens with these tag team titles? Do these titles go back to being irrelevant again? Depending on who the top guy is. And for instance, if Drew beats Roman, Roman leaves and goes and does whatever he's done, whether he goes to Hollywood, where he just takes time off, what do the Usos then do? Do they just go back to sitting there being tag team champions? Do they lose them and then they just sit there doing nothing every week? And like, it's really frustrating with WWE because there's so much good stuff sitting there, but we're just forced to watch the same stuff every week, and it really baffles me why they can't just do a simple story or why they can't do a series of matches. I'm really excited for this Finn AJ stuff. I'm gassed for it. It's something I've wanted to see for ages, but the fact that we've taken, God, I'm trying to think how long AJ's been in the WWE now for 5-6 years. It's taken 5-6 years for these two to have a series or to even have some sort of connection together. And it's like, is that how long we have to wait for a decent storyline for each division now? It's 5-6 years. You tell me I've got to wait another 2 years for the women's tag team titles to have a major storyline plot. It's just crazy.
No, you make some really good points there indeed. And obviously, just to quickly mention there, even with a storyline that you're looking forward to, like the AJ and Balor one, they had the scenario with Liv Morgan this past week on Raw, and whether she was going to come to ringside with them. She just sort of turned up. They didn't even delay and give suspense for it. Perhaps it could have been a beatdown from Judgment Day, and then she comes and makes a save and evens up the odds. None of that went on this week. She just turned up, and then they did the two sweet at the end there. So, like you said, that there are these little things that we were given, but it's just not enough with it. But to just quickly go back onto to that tag team scenario and to make it relevant with the topic of the video and the women's tag team titles, basically what we're saying then is that if Naomi and Sasha join the Bloodline, for example, all of a sudden these titles would become relevant because they're under the banner where Roman Reigns is, which is what matters for WWE in their eyes, because Roman Reigns and Randy Orton are involved with what this scenario storyline right now. But Sasha Banks is arguably one of the biggest stars in the company as well. So I don't get why these belts still aren't given a prominence and relevancy when you've got one of your top stars holding them. It's mind-baffling to me.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, we've put in Sasha and Naomi in there. Like, this is one thing that AEW gets right is their whole faction dynamic, because you get so many people on screen at once, and it gives everyone some screen time. Like, you may not have a major part, but you're on TV and you'll be involved in some capacity or another. And for instance, if you like, I know this is kind of contradicting what I just said, but if you imagine you should have had Naomi as the SmackDown Women's Champion going, and she was part of the Bloodline, and just how awesome that would have looked to have seen a prominent female character in that faction holding one, if not two, and like they could have had a whole storyline or whatever. Because you could have then had the dynamic of where you could have had a whole pay-per-view based around the Bloodline, where you could have had the Usos go up against the tag team. You could have had Naomi go up against another female star for a title. You could have had Roman match the card. The possibilities are there, but they just seem to not want to do these kind of things. And I know that a lot of problems with their creative is that the people that do their creative aren't wrestling fans. They're just essentially writers, which doesn't help their situation. But this is another reason why I'm excited for this. Again, this AJ, Liv Morgan, Finn. You've put three superstars. Like, Liv added into that dynamic is just such an exciting prospect, because like people are sitting there thinking, oh yeah, we're going to get Edge, Priest, and Rhea versus Finn, AJ, and Liv. And the idea I put out to you, the mixed intergender Survivor Series style match, it's really interesting. They've never done it before. But I'm a wrestling fan and I can think of that kind of stuff. Whereas their creative team just kind of, it almost feels like most of the time we're watching a soap opera rather than like a wrestling show. And it really pains me. Like, I sit there and watch Raw, and I sit there sometimes and I'm like, I could have really spent 3 hours better doing something else. But like I said, I think a lot of people feel that way. But yeah, just, like I said, AEW with this faction thing just makes it right, because you get so many people on TV, and like this, like even if you had, like you said, Sasha and Naomi part of the Bloodline and make the women's tag team titles relevant, it would have been a whole dynamic, a whole story, and it just would have made so much sense. And like I said, this is why I enjoy talking to you, because you think of this stuff that I didn't even think of, and it sounds amazing. The thought of Naomi and Sasha in part of the Bloodline, and like I said, it's two wrestling fans throwing ideas out there that just unfortunately will probably never see the light of day.
Unfortunately, not indeed there. But so you said you about wasting 3 hours watching Raw. Someone who did that for the first time in a while, and he said about it on his YouTube channel today. Make sure to check that rant out at some point from Nonstop Wrestling Chat. We'll go through all the comments now. So let's say if you've got any different topics, we're going to discuss that going forward. Now, NXT, I really think we should have a brand split. It should be like the old days, 4 pay-per-views each for branding. So Raw, SmackDown, and then 4 together. And then it's a brand split. It means something. Otherwise, it's just a waste. Do you think that would improve the brand split as well for you? The fact that obviously we mentioned about these people not getting their TV time and stuff like that and their premium live event at the time. If they had single branded shows again, would that improve it?
Yeah, because then for instance, the IC title and the United States title will become more relevant, and they'll get matches on pay-per-views. And you're like, I hate to say it, but I almost miss them. Like, and it's I know when people pay money for the network or they pay for these premium live events, you want to see all the stars on one show. But at the time, WWE had to do it because they had such a massive roster, and you think they've released nearly 200 people or so in the last couple of years, and their rosters are still too big that they can't get people on TV. But yeah, going back to solo pay-per-views, yes, because it would then add more build, I believe. Instead of going from month to month, you could go sort of every 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is that would be between obviously the big 4 and then big 5 if you had Money in the Bank to that. I don't know how they would work that one, but yeah, it would, I suppose, do more build. But then WWE don't book WWE like they used to. Like, I remember back in the day where you would have whoever won the Rumble would go on to Mania, but at no point until, for instance, the go home show to Mania would the Rumble winner and the champion ever interact. They'd never be in a match together. They would never, do you know what I mean? They might tag them together, like put them together versus someone else as a dynamic, but you would never see them lay hands on each other. And it made it more exciting and more must see that I've been building this match for 3 months now. These guys haven't had a chance to lay a hand on each other because this, that, and whatever. But now it's just like, not so much with Roman, but like Bobby Lashley was champion. He was on TV every week fighting his next opponent in some capacity in like a 6-man tag or a tag team match. And it's just like you kill the momentum with what pay-per-views and premium live events are supposed to be. And yeah, I suppose it's my old age showing there, but we need to go back to the old ways because it just made it more exciting and more anticipation to the product.
Absolutely, indeed. Yeah, and I like that. I mean, obviously these days, if everyone on creative plays universe mode on WWE games, that's how they sort of create things. You have to have everyone together every week for it to still have that story connecting. But I agree. Like, obviously, like you say there, you kind of have like the more time to space things out between the shows, which really, really works. Obviously, maybe you can have 6 shared events because obviously Survivor Series is in there as well, I suppose. But no, they're one of the big 5, aren't they? So I don't know. They would find a way where they could make it work, but obviously it would be interesting how they would do it. Obviously, the last time the brand split ones did about 16 premium live events in one calendar year, which I think was too many. So they probably still find a way to oversaturate it. But I certainly would be a fan of that layout there from Barry. That was definitely a good idea. But Noob & Co says, really hate the 24/7 title, and of course the women's tag titles are cursed. Everyone said it when those titles are brought into existence. Yeah, I mean the teams don't last together very long, and we've talked about the women's tag team titles in quite a bit of depth already. But the 24/7 championship, does it still have a place for you in WWE TV? I mean, obviously it does give some people some TV time.
It's not that I think it has a place because it is, like I said, it is a comedic relief, especially if you're trying to portray serious dynamics. Like this week, it was sort of in between like Cody Rhodes and his thing with Seth, and then the main event, and it was a nice little just sort of 5-minute break and a 5-minute comedic relief. But I think a lot of people miss like the hardcore title, and like I can see where they're coming from. Like I remember, like you'd sit there and watch it, and all of a sudden the Big Show would pick up someone, just pin him against the wall, and they would count it as a pinfall, and Big Show would be in the champion. Like they would take it like when Crash Holly took it into a kid's playpen and was being chased for a playpen and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, it's entertaining, but it's just its positioning on the show just seems to be like I said, the segment before the main event, I just find it really strange because it's not a major title. Like I said, R-Truth is now the most crowned champion. He's got like something like 50 odd runs as the 24/7 champion. So there's no credibility to it, but it is entertaining. So I can see why they will keep it around.
Yeah, absolutely. But it gives people TV time. I think my main problem with it is that whoever's associated with it, or even around the stories of them, they're not seen as any credibility whatsoever to go for other championships further down the line. You'd never see at this moment the idea of like a Dana Brooke or a Tamina ever going for the tag titles or even the top singles championships. They seem to be in an area all of their own.
But that's what I mean. That's what the 24/7 title does to people. Like Dana Brooke, she's never won a title. Her first ever championship in WWE is the 24/7 title. And now you find it really hard to believe that she'll go on to win a SmackDown championship or a Raw championship. I mean, yeah, Tamina was a former tag team title. So, sorry, a former tag team champion. And yeah, it just seems to be like it's like the end of a line for some people with it. Like it's just almost a reason just to keep you around, is just to fill out the 24/7 championship. But then it's been the same sort of 2, 3, 4 characters for a year now, and it's not like anyone else apart from, unless it's like a pay-per-view or it's that random occasion where Byron and Corey Graves win it. It's just it's the same 4 people. It's essentially it's the longest story that WWE have is the 24/7 title.
Yeah, pretty much. It seems to be a recurring theme. Then, as Non-Stop Wrestling Chat says, that it doesn't matter anywhere else. It's for for the 24/7 championship. That's just how they do things. It almost doesn't matter where it is on the card. It's the same old song and dance with it. But obviously, yeah, it's a questionable division. But WWE obviously use their comic relief in the way that they do. And Martin Carrillo here has gone on to say that WWE needs to find a way to approach and open up with their top stars. He does correct this sentence in the next comment, by the way. He says, at this point, the women's tag team division is unsavable and should be scrapped and let them go at it separate. So that's his take there on the women's tag team championship, so whether they should be kept or whether not. And obviously we've had our say on it already, but obviously if they could find a way of keeping it going, I'm sure that we would be in favor of them sticking around. And obviously the way that you would start by doing that is if you can get Sasha and Naomi to come back, actually treat them the credibility as champions, as a team, and try and get other creditable teams in amongst that picture and not break everybody up every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is as well is now if they take away the tag team titles, that's another 2 single stars going for the same 2 titles. So what was already an oversaturated like roster of like 4, 5, 6 people going for each title, you're now going to take a tag team, separate them, and add them to the title, and it's just you have too many people going, and it's not like they ever go for like a 60-minute, like what's the one where it's like a time limit and whoever has the last pinfall is the champion.
Not an Iron Man, more like a scramble match.
Yeah, like championship scramble, not like they ever do championship scrambles where they've got 6 people in the ring and like it changes hands every 5 minutes for 20 minutes until someone walks away with the title. It's always one-on-one matches. It's very rare that the women's title ever has multi-person matches in the title picture. Like I said, I think what you're probably looking at Mania with Charlotte, Becky, and Ronda was probably the last major one. There hasn't really been a major story that's involved more than 2 people. You've probably had more than 2 number 1 contenders, but then that's another thing. Why they do the whole, what do they call it? A championship opportunity. Like you have to beat the champion so you can face them next week for the title to get a championship shot. It really doesn't make sense, like really, why they do it. Like just have a number 1 contenders match between 2 people. Why does someone have to beat the champ just to lose to the champ next week? It really doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, totally agree with you there. And championship contender matches do my nutting. I can't stand it. They make no sense whatsoever. Non-Stop Wrestling Chat, by the way, says, I've got to get NX Steve on the show. I think it'd be a good chat there. So I think that you might have another podcast opportunity coming your way very soon there.
Yeah, man. I'm whenever, man. Like I said, as long as I can work it into my schedule, it shouldn't be a problem, man. I'm normally free most nights anyway.
Absolutely. There we go. We can hopefully get that one arranged and to go and see that on the NWC show sometime soon. Definitely worth a subscribe to go and check that one out. Martin Chris says, I really don't like the fact that fans are teasing for Sasha and Naomi to join AEW. We should just wait and see. Totally agree. But I mean, to be fair, I said that we didn't really need to have this conversation earlier on, but we will do very, very quickly. There's no way they're going to be going to AEW or anywhere else. This is almost like a non-factor.
Naomi being part of that whole family, the whole Hawaii family, there's no way that she'd end up going over to AEW. WWE would throw a title at her. They would do everything they could just to keep Naomi. Like I said, because of her family connection with who she's married to and stuff. And Sasha Banks is just big money. WWE would break the bank to keep her. They would literally, like I said, with MJF, they would just throw a blank check at her, be like, put whatever you want on it, and just you'll stay here. Like I said, she might go part-time and go and do stuff in Hollywood, which is if that's what WWE should do, because that if they don't let her do that, that's what will drive her out, and that's what will drive her to go onto Hollywood, what will drive her to go towards AEW. They'd be criminal to lose the pair of them, because they are two really good talents.
They are two very good talents. They're two that have really been, I would say idols for many people that are watching the product as well. Obviously, Sasha's been one of the faces of the division, but I mean, let's not discredit Naomi. She's been around since 2010 on our screens in WWE. So she's been there for a very, very long time, like 12 years now. So obviously breaking through with the Usos back in the day, in their very early days also. So I mean, they're very credible talents. So hopefully, people will come to the senses. It can hopefully get results where things go into Sasha and Naomi's favor, but I don't see any of them go to any other companies. That's just my personal take on that.
Plus, if WWE release Naomi, who are they going to get to do their Kofi spots in the Women's Rumble?
Absolutely, indeed, they're totally. And Noob does to say here, this comment's just come in here. WWE is planning on having Naomi to join the Bloodline. We'll have to wait and see if that would still be the case now, obviously, after what's happened over the last 24 hours. But certainly, I think that's something that was in the works and would have been something we would have liked to have seen. But yeah, I mean, until we have more information now, obviously that is purely speculation at this point. Muscular says, as a possible team, I'd have liked to have seen Xia Li and Asuka. It would help in many ways, maybe get a big market in the Asian continent. Asuka can elevate Xia Li and they can add another team. I mean, obviously can add another team. I actually thought the Xia Li and Shotzi would have been my potential take on it, because they're both on SmackDown. But what would be your take? And obviously, it could be a team that could work for the reasons that Martin suggested.
I honestly forgot Xia Li was even on SmackDown. Like I said, she hasn't been used at all. They relaunched her gimmick 3 times, I think, and it's just like they have no idea what they're doing with her. Like the best thing she was doing was the whole thing in NXT, and then they just went, yeah, that's all scrapped. When you choose now, running around in pajamas, tormenting Toxic Attraction, and Boa is, well, I haven't seen Boa in months, to be fair.
No, it's been a while.
And Xia Li's just said she had her gimmick reimagined 3 times, and she's just not done anything. The problem with having Asuka team with Xia Li is I think that's too close to what the Kabuki Warriors were, and I think that I'd rather not have them like rehash an old gimmick or an old idea just because they're from the same part of the world. I don't think it doesn't work for me. I'd just like to see Xia Li do something interesting. I'd like to see her actually be on TV. Like I said, there's a talent there that I completely forgot was even on the roster. Get her on there doing something, man. This is why they need to end this. Well, even in the brand split, but they just need to get them doing something. And it's just, I'm sick of seeing the same 3-4 people challenging. Like, I'm not being funny. Why couldn't Xia Li have come out on SmackDown last week and faced Ronda Rousey and have Ronda Rousey go over Xia Li? It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt Xia Li because she's not on TV. If anything, it will do more good for her to get her on TV. Even put her in a small program where, I don't know, she just goes for Ronda, but she doesn't win the title. But they don't. I don't get me wrong. They used Raquel instead, but Raquel's just come up. Xia Li's been up since before Christmas, and she's still not predominantly used on TV. It's just criminal.
I mean, I liked the way they did it with Raquel Rodriguez, but there's no reason why Xia Li couldn't be on this week. And certainly I agree with a lot of the points you make there. And I agree as well with the pairing with Asuka as well. Although I think it's an interesting suggestion. As I say, I would go with a different direction if it was myself personally, especially as Asuka right now is in at the top end of the card. She's going to go for the Raw Women's Championship at the next Premium Live event. But there's been a few calls on this here, so I'll bring these up in the comments. NXT, Phil, for you watching Raw after this week. He's going back to the Clipsers non-stop wrestling chat. And West Coast Popcast has also said the same. Unfortunately, I watch Raw every week for our channel to properly analyse it. 3 hours is too much, plus 20 minutes our recaps and extra time allows for lazy booking. And I think personally, this is something where I think perhaps being in the UK can be of a benefit a little bit here, is because when you're watching the show live, you've got the adverts and stuff as well. It's still a very heavy watch when you wake up the next day and you can skim the adverts. But at the same time, I mean, obviously, we only have to watch it for 2 hours, 15 minutes if we wanted to.
Yeah, but the problem with the clips as well is that you don't get the full story on the show because there's still a lot of stuff that they don't put on the YouTube channel. Like there's some of the segments in between matches that unless you watch the full show, you don't actually know half the time, because most of it is purely just the last 2-3 minutes of a match or an in-ring segment. But yeah, like I said, there's many times that I used to do that. I used to only watch the YouTube clips, and I would realize that, I've missed key story parts because WWE don't put the clip up. So I then find myself watching the clip and then having to go back and watch the replay. Like, lucky for me, I've got BT Sport on my app here, so in the morning I could just whiz through the adverts, whiz through the commercial breaks. But I have to then sit there and try and find all these key parts of the story that they just don't show, and it is really frustrating. But that's why I've gone back to having to watch the full 3 hours, because if I don't, then I miss key parts.
Absolutely. But I mean, obviously for casual fans, it's not such a biggie, I guess.
Yeah.
But for people, those podcasts as well, who review it each and every week, going through on their channel as well, and it's a great channel, by the way. People, make sure to go and subscribe to them.
There's many channels.
Dedication.
There's many podcasts that I used to listen to that stopped reviewing Raw on the night because it was such a 3 hours to just drove and just sit there and watch it and then do an hour review or however many podcasts. And the amount of them that I know that just stopped watching it live, then doing a review, and just went back to doing a highlight or a podcast the next day after they've just watched it in the smaller segments. I mean, personally, I don't think Raw's been too bad lately. I've enjoyed some of the product, but yeah, I can just see why people have stopped watching it in live, because it's so long in places that it's just unbearable to watch. And then, like I said, you get a commercial break halfway through the main event of a match. I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. It's your main event match, and you put a commercial break on. Like, it's okay for people in the States. I believe they get like picture in picture, but over here, we get like 2-3 minutes of commercial break, so we miss it all. So like, I just think it's the dumbest thing. What other sport do you know puts a commercial break on through their main event? Like, I know you watch the boxing, but they don't put no commercial breaks on through the boxing. It's a very strange thing to do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that 100,000,000% there. And I think obviously going through WCW at the moment as well on the network, that's sort of what my sort of binge time is when I'm not watching the up-to-date stuff. I would say as well that Nitro goes through the same thing, and WWE right now with Raw, it kind of is a classic Nitro, because if you took the filler out, it's a good show. But I think when you've got the filler stuff in there, and like you say, with these sort of key components of putting adverts in weird places and stuff, it can really throw it. And it's stuff that never used to happen back in the old days. But we will try and get through the rest of the comments as best as we can. Want to make sure we get everyone on before we close off the show today. So Martin says, speaking on what Non-Stop Wrestling Chat said, which I do agree, have 5 premium live events, each for Raw and SmackDown, 1 month break after WrestleMania and SummerSlam. They go head to head. What are your thoughts on that idea?
I like the idea of going back to individual pay-per-views. I think it would make more sense. They did it initially because they have a roster that was too big. They still have a roster that is too big, and they need to do something with it because, like I said, IC title hasn't been on a premium live event since Mania last year, and it's criminal because the IC probably has the most heritage out of all the championships. You know what I mean? It's the workers' title, and the fact that it gets treated that gets treated worse than a 24/7 title. It baffles me.
Absolutely, yeah. For me, I would be okay with that idea. Like I say, it also puts such prestige on WrestleMania and SummerSlam. Actually, even if they aren't going head to head, but they actually are just all on the same show on that night. Because I don't think Survivor Series, many would say that the build to that isn't been as strong over most recent years with doing Raw versus SmackDown, even though I quite enjoyed it last year in particular, as many people are well publicized when I do these videos. But at the same time, I look at it and see that the benefit they can have by having, like you said, these individual shows, because people then get more TV time, and these new talents have a time to shine on the time that matters the most, which is the premium live events, because that's the time where it's seen as the special show, where the special big win would come, where you get over. Although maybe ratings are more for Raw and SmackDown than premium lives these days. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm too old school and I think that. But Martin also says the draft could be during the month break as well. I mean, that could be a good idea there. Good placement for it.
The draft should be literally a month after. If for instance they were going to go back, for me personally, if they're going to go back to individual shows, Survivor Series should be built like how Mania is built, as obviously their big cross-brand promo where it's going to be brand versus brand, bringing NXT into it as well. Let's be honest, when they did it in 2018, 2019, whenever it was. Yeah, that was for me, like I said, I've done on your channel here. I think that's my favorite Survivor Series of all time because it had irrelevancy to it. Yes, all right, it was a bit of a marketing ploy to advertise NXT moving over onto live TV, but I was thoroughly excited by it. And the fact that NXT won, it just made more sense to me. But they can build Survivor Series to be that massive WrestleMania type event at the end of the year, which is why, again, if they went 2 days on the big four, so Survivor Series, SummerSlam, Rumble, and Mania, it's your opportunity to get both brands on the show. Even Money in the Bank, make that a weekend event as well. You can then get all the titles on the show. Survivor Series would be massive. And then say have the draft a month after that, which is obviously the initial question what this was. Then that way you've got 11 months to build towards the next Survivor Series, and we don't get this rubbish where they bang on about brand supremacy and brand loyalty when they've only been on the show 3 or 4 weeks before Survivor Series normally happens. And that's what I mean. And then you have the big 4 or 5 as weekend events where everyone's on the show. Then for the rest of the year, you obviously have your things like your Super Showdown in Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. Make that if you made that like a big weekend event as well, so they'd have 6 massive ones, and then you could have 3 individual pay-per-views for Raw, 3 individual pay-per-views for SmackDown throughout the year. That's what I would do, because then, like I said, you just get more of this talent on the roster, and everyone gets more prominent feature, and more of the titles are used in the proper way, and they have more meaning behind them. So when people win them for the first time, like when Ricochet won the IC title for the first time, I just don't think it was made a big deal out of, and it just didn't feel as special when he won it. And I love Ricochet, and I would love nothing more to see him go on and win a world title. But like I said, at the minute with that IC title, he just doesn't feel relevant.
No, he does not at all. Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that there. And I like the idea of the draft that being said there. I mean, the draft is expected to be earlier this year. Apparently, rumored not long after SummerSlam. SummerSlam is actually going to be earlier this year. So there is a chance if the draft is in August this year, that by the time it comes to November, at least it's 3 months. So it makes it seem a little bit better with the brand supremacy than what they've done in perhaps more recent years. But Non-Stop is actually agreeing with Martin there. Says a really split like the old days would work, and that month off for the draft would make it feel special. I do personally agree that it would add some special prestige into that. We have a couple more comments left, and then we will wrap up the stream today. Eagles here and saying that when it comes to having your sources or having a source inside the actual company, all these websites and all these wrestling channels should just do one thing and just be partial with journalism. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like I say, I mean, with what we're talking about today, personally, we're going off what other people are suggesting. Obviously, we're saying we don't know anything that's going on, which is why we're perhaps more reluctant to take one side rather than the other on this situation. But I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what more information does come out. Obviously, the journalistic sources probably are going to be our best bet of finding stuff out, but there are some legitimately, if anything, too good sources these days. In fact, sometimes it ruins a lot of the content that people watch if they find it out before they're watching the TV screen. So, I mean, there is some really good, top journalisms out there. I mean, obviously, as I will give a shout to one of our very own that deserves a bit more love for his YouTube and his commitment. It's Tom Collique, definitely is. It's so far, I think, has been ahead of the curve with a lot of stuff going on in multiple different topics in the wrestling world, and currently has got information out through his sources that have not been said anywhere else, to my knowledge, at the time of this recording. So, and then his video of that was actually released in the UK part of this morning. So that goes to show that he's got quite ahead of the curve. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on this? I mean, obviously, we're saying here with wrestling channels and sites and stuff, do you think that more people should be like us and be patient? Because you look on Twitter, people are very dedicated one side or another already in this situation.
With journalism, I think you're either a fan of it or you're not a fan of it. I mean, the problem is, as human beings, we tend to want to be involved in crazy situations, or if like there's a story going on, we kind of want to know the gossip to it. But from a wrestling perspective, like you won't beat the old days where, like, when there was a surprise return, it was genuinely a surprise return because you didn't know what was going to happen. So it is 50 of one and half of another. You can love some of it and you can hate some of it, and it's just there's no winner really. I suppose with some stuff, I mean, if you make a living out of it, Like, if you get paid to do these kinds of things, and yes, I suppose they are beneficial to you. For you and me, we're just having a casual chat about everything that's gone on the last day. I suppose it's just, for me personally, it's just good to get another perspective from someone else, because I don't really talk to a lot of people about wrestling aside from maybe yourself and Jonesy and one or two others. But like I said, it's always good to have someone else's perspective put in, rather than me just thinking one thing where you might say something that will make my brain go, oh yeah, I didn't actually think of that. So you say it's 50 wins and losses with journalism on wrestling. It can be good and it can be bad.
Absolutely there. And no, I totally agree with that. And obviously, this has been a topic that's got a lot of people checking out a lot of different content. I've got to say, I've been throughout the day checking lots of different content out, whether it's been journalism, whether it's been fan reactions as well, where, some of them have been in-depth discussions and debates. Obviously, Mexico WrestleMania UK has had a fantastic podcast that went out around about 6:30 UK time this evening on his channel. So I definitely recommend people to go and check that out and all the take there with Black Wrestling Alliance. Had in Cat We Trust on there, and Stephanie Hardy as well on there. Fantastic. So people got time to go and check that podcast out as well on Mex's channel. But I mean, yeah, obviously, we're going to actual journalism itself. Yes, it comes with its pros and it comes with its cons, but they definitely are going to be a placement there of where a lot of information probably will come out, because and it's not going to come from Sasha and Naomi directly from WWE. They've chosen to put some stuff out. What stuff will come out afterwards, we'll have to wait and see. Is it legit what they put out? Is it propaganda? It's all hearsay at this point. But as NXT has said, it is always good to know what other people are thinking about the situation and just to see. And I mean, I like to think that we've been discussing this in a balanced scenario to this point, without really committing one way or the other. But it's going to be interesting to see what other people think in the comments below as well. We're going to take our last comment now, and then we're going to switch it to you guys to let me know in the actual chat after this video has gone offline. And obviously, I'll be interacting with everyone that does get involved with this video. If you can like it as well, share with a friend as well, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here as well. It really does help this channel go a very, very long way. So do appreciate all the people that will do it. And obviously, it will help reach the video out further on YouTube as well. But Noob with our final comment then says, I think it's time to call up Wendy Chu and rename her, but keep Oscar away from the women's tag team titles and the women's tag team division. What are your thoughts then? Obviously, I completely agree with the Oscar stuff, by the way. She's in the main event scene right now. I don't think she should be in the tag team anytime soon either. But with Wendy Chu, what's been your thought of the gimmick? Do you think that gimmick is working as she was to be called up? Do you reckon she needs to be renamed? What was your thoughts on Wendy Chu in NXT?
I'm not particularly a fan of the gimmick. This is kind of, for me, a 24/7 character. Like, it is entertaining, but when you're using it to go after your NXT Women's Champion, I don't know. It's frustrating because I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and I don't want to see. I don't know. I think it's a clash of characters for me. Like, this Wendy Chu character is meant to be comedic, but then on the other side, when she was Mei Ling, part of that faction with Xia Li, she sat on a chair for 6 months and did absolutely nothing apart from spitting, I think it was Caden Carter's face once, or breathe smoke in her face, and they played that off like it was nothing. So I suppose in one way, yes, it's a plus, she's doing something, but for me personally, I'm not the biggest fan. But like I said, it's a 24/7 character for me.
Yeah, I would agree. When she's called up, I do think that's the case. I think that's probably why Noob is possibly suggesting that she maybe needs rebranding when she's called up. And a lot of people are rebranded when they're called up, even though we've got this new NXT, which seems a bit mind-baffling to myself personally. But you do need comic relief characters as well, but it's how they're positioned on the card. I think you make a very good point. But amongst with Toxic Attraction, Mandy Rose, it sort of doesn't feel the right placement for a Wendy Chu. It's more of it's a lower card act. It's not something that's going to be your top champion. I think that's probably what could be the issue with it. But I personally will say, though, I do get enjoyment out of watching Wendy Chu, particularly in her early work where she was asleep in the corner, the way that she would sort of be a bit creative with her offense when she do the comebacks and stuff.
Yeah, it's entertaining, which is, don't get me wrong, I appreciate, like you said, she was like, at one point, she was asleep on top of lockers, and don't get me wrong, it's hilarious, but I just think it's unless you're planning on putting that world title, that NXT title on Wendy Chu, these two interacting just doesn't make sense for me. But then at the minute with NXT, I personally don't feel there isn't a big female star to take on Mandy that hasn't, or like recently, you just had Kaylee Ray, Cora Jade, and someone else.
Io
They were in
Shirai.
that's it, Io Shirai. Apart from those four, there's no one else really. Maybe Nikita Lyons is getting there, but there's just no other top female star at the minute. So sort of Mandy's just sitting pretty on that perch at the minute, and I don't think she's got anything to worry about losing that title anytime soon.
No, I completely agree. And she definitely will not be losing it to Wendy Chu. That's one thing for sure. And obviously, that's a filler storyline for the meantime. I'm not a fan of Super Soakers, by the way, for anyone that was wondering, and stealing people's stuff on the beach. I don't condone that action either, if anyone was just wondering. But, you know, at the same time, with Wendy Chu and that, I'm sure that, like you say, it will come to the breakout tournament. I think Nikita Lyons will be the one that will win that tournament and will be the one then that will actually will go on and probably win the championship for Mandy Rose when it does come along. NXT, I have to just say, 4 new comments have come in quickly. Do we have time to go through them very quickly before we close off? We do have time. We will try and do them fairly within the next 5 minutes, and that way we keep it fair for everyone that's watching, and but we actually give them some credibility for the people asking the questions as well. But Randy Sam says, Steve, how do you feel about this Hangman and Punk storyline? I agree with Steve, he's not mad because we had comedy character for years, and she's actually going to remain fair enough on that one. Thank you very much, Randy Sam. But what's your thoughts then with Hangman Page and CM Punk as a storyline?
It's my thoughts on Hangman's title run in general has been very lackluster since he's won it, unless they're having Page turn heel on Punk and him beating Punk and staying champion. For me, Punk's winning that championship at Double or Nothing. It's either a case of getting the title off of him or trying to do something drastic to elevate his title run, because for me personally, it's been lackluster. And like I said, if you want to do something, turn him heel and have him beat CM Punk at Double or Nothing and retain, because that would be a massive shock.
It certainly would be a big win for Hangman. I think regardless if it's face or heel, I think it's a big... and this is, I think, why CM Punk was needed at this time, because it's the right time to put Punk in there. He's come off of a big program with MJF, and that really sort of brought Punk properly back into the dance after doing the reunion tour. So now we're in proper programs. These two have made it quite personal. I think they've made the best of the scenarios they've had with each other when they've been able to interact. Of course, Hangman was off as well at one point, obviously with COVID. So now he's back. Obviously, it was only for about a week or so he was off. Yeah, I mean, to me, I do think that this storyline has been fine. It is the main event, obviously, for what will be Double or Nothing, what I think will be a really, really good show. So, yeah, let's see how it's going to go down. And Martin asked very quickly as well, what championship reign is better, Big E's or Hangman Adam Page's?
It's got to be Hangman, because Big E was picking up losses every week when he was champ. He was losing on TV to everyone. At least Hangman's beating people, and he's had a prolonged run with it. It sucks as much as it does, but but Big E was, for me, was just, he was losing on TV every week, and it just almost felt like they had no enthusiasm or no belief in Big E being a champion. Like, it was put on him as fan service, and then they just wanted to get it off him as quickly as possible. So for me personally, I think Hangman's has been better, only slightly, but it has been better.
Yeah, Hangman's has been better. He's had, obviously, programs against the likes of Adam Cole. He's had it against Bryan Danielson as well. So the fantastic 60-minute Ironman match. I would love Big E to be my answer on this, because I'm so happy when he won the championship. But no, Big E, no. Unfortunately, that championship reign didn't work out. And I wish him a very speedy recovery, Big E. So I know, obviously, he's still... he's still going around with the neck brace on at the minute. So fingers crossed he can get more positive news. We share positivity with Big E. Hope he can be back on our TV screens and hopefully back in the wrestling ring one day in the future. Randy Sam also says it's just like what AEW doing with Danhausen. He's a comedy guy, but we do need to see a world champion in AEW. But do we need to see him face a world champion? No, I mean, that's the case. We don't need to see him face a world champion. Obviously, Danhausen and Hookhausen is becoming a popular thing right now as well. And they'll be on the buy-in, obviously, when it comes to Double or Nothing. But that's a very good comparison with the Wendy Chu and Danhausen. I quite like that.
But see, with AEW, they made Orange Cassidy a believable competitor for the AEW World Championship when he was in that triple threat. Like, everyone knew he wasn't going to win against Kenny and apologies, I forget whoever the third person was in the match.
It was Pac, I believe.
Moxley, Pac, maybe, yeah. But after that, I honestly sat there and thought that in 3-4 years' time, you could see Orange Cassidy as the AEW World Champion, which is, for me, a massive plus. like I said, Danhausen, I knew of him, but I've never seen anything of him. But the fact that he's doing something relevant and they're possibly putting him in a tag team with Hook, like, it's exciting to see, and I want to see it. And yes, he is a comedy character, but he's just being Danhausen. He's not doing stupid stuff that someone's told him to do. He's just being his character that he's created, which is why I think Danhausen is a lot better on AEW than what, for instance, Wendy Chu is on NXT.
I think another comparison as well that you could say, Wendy Chu's been a character for about 3-4 months tops, and obviously Orange Cassidy's been presented over a number of years as well. When I know AEW is like 3 years old, but still, it's been more time to expose and introduce what an Orange Cassidy is to this world. Danhausen's still in those early birth stages, so he's probably a good comparison to make right now, because you wouldn't put him anywhere near a world champion. But maybe if it's booked correctly over a case of, months and years, maybe it can be a different case scenario. So I do like that.
But this was the other thing as well. Having Danhausen lose his debut match to Tony Nese was genius booking, because everyone knows whenever they debut, they always win their debut match. It's what, like an unwritten law in wrestling. Like, the new wrestler always has to win their debut match. But Danhausen losing, I was shocked. I was honestly like, Tony Nese picking up that win for, I was like, this is actually the most clever thing I've seen someone do from a creative point in wrestling in a long time, when it comes to things like who should win and who should lose. Having a new wrestler lose his debut match was just unreal.
Absolutely. And when he does get that win, it's going to be an even bigger pop. Eagles is more of a statement, this, rather than more anything else. But as you said, it won't come directly from them. They'll put out a statement. It will come from social media team, someone on the legal side, and anything will be said. It will be done by Twitter. And that's pretty much the reaction of what will be following on with Sasha, Naomi, and WWE, which we've covered in heavy detail now. So we will do our last couple of comments just before we do finish off. So do not put any more comments in. We'll do the ones that are left, and then that's it. We'll come off the screen in the next 5 minutes, literally. But Randy Thames said he would call up Casey and Caden Carton would start a women's tournament after Hell in a Cell. Would be something you'd like to see?
Yes, like I've said it, Casey and Caden are the longest actually established tag team on WWE for women's division, so it would make all the sense in the world. They just need to, like I said, they just need to make the titles relevant. They need to have these teams form naturally and not just be a case of, oh, we've put these two together this week and then we're going to push them, because that's what I felt Naomi and Sasha were, was they just a team that were thrown together, but they are trying to make the best out of the situation they're given, which I suppose you have to praise them for. But yeah, Casey and Caden, like I said, longest established tag team on WWE TV is mad.
It really is mad to see that they've not actually gone on to win titles yet or really be contenders in any way. Mark says, did you guys see Wendy Chu and Mandy Rose Tansky in NXT? That was a cringe fest. Well, it certainly wasn't Ross Geller and friends. We'll put it that much.
Yeah. But like I said, this is the whole thing. Is the character dynamic is very strange, because I can't understand why you would have your top women wrestler in NXT part of a comedy sketch where she gets left on a sun in bed for too long. It really is some weird creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with that. And Randy goes on to say that if it was the book Punk and Handmaid's page, I know you guys are going to be mad, but I would have someone come out and destroy them and have people talking maybe a Miro return and be the guy who people want to destroy. I suppose, I guess what he's trying to say is that, this is a way to build up a heel in this situation. Is that something you'd like to see? I mean, it'd be a pay-per-view main event.
Yeah, not on a pay-per-view main event. I think a pay-per-view main event needs to have a definitive finish, because I think I would feel like I've been bumped. Like, you obviously pay extra to watch these pay-per-views, and to have someone come out and do that is not for me. But unless they were, like, if for that idea to work for me, I would go, for example, a time limit draw, which again is not a good thing, but if it's, 30 minutes and it's an absolute barn burner and the wrestling's really good, and then you got that draw, then take it over onto TV and have it on Dynamite the following Wednesday, then you could do something like that. That's the only way I would want to see that happen, because, I think for a pay-per-view, I wouldn't want to see that.
No, I totally understand that indeed there. And just to say a big thank you to Marta Guerrero. Says, overall, this was a great live stream with some really important topics covered. Really enjoyed it. Hearing your opinions, going to head out. Well, thank you very much, Martin. And we're pretty much going to head out as well. Just say Eagles actually put a comment here as well, saying that if anything said, it will be done by Twitter, done by the social media. And this is how it seems to go. Understanding, don't want us to be too long. Well, fingers crossed, whatever this resolution is going to be, everyone can be happy at the end of it. I think that's what's the most important thing. Shade has got him right at the death here to say that why did Mr. McMahon did not create women's tag team division when Stephanie built her own from scratch? I mean, look, this was more of an idea. I think that, like we said, it's not been a McMahon pushed idea. I think this is something that the talent
It's
wanted.
a fan service.
It's a fan service, and obviously Sasha and Bailey were two at the forefront of that. Sasha's really taken it to heart with the women's tag division, wanting to make it relevant. Sadly, WWE has not continued in the same vein with that, and I think that's what's been a real shame with it. And obviously, it's probably a contribution as what led to the blows here.
Yeah, I mean, with Sasha, I think being stitched over once with the women's tag team division, and then to have it happen to you again a couple of years later, I think is just like. From a personal point of view, like she was robbed the first time when they lost it to the Iconics, and she left, and she was like, we're trying to, like, from the wrestler's point of view, I think you have to look at it from like an artist point of view, like this is their art and they want to do something creative and meaningful, and then to have someone tell you that, well, reportedly that your tag team partner is going to pin you and then go on to face the Raw Women's Champion, which I forget the name of because my brain's gone blank, and then it just doesn't make sense. But hang on, we're a tag team. Why would this happen? You can't do this in the women's division because there aren't enough wrestlers to do this, or it doesn't make sense when you've got other women that are not doing anything. I suppose from that point, Sasha's maybe looking at it like that there's other women in the division that you could push. Alexa Bliss has just come back, so why isn't Alexa Bliss doing something? You have Doudrop, you have Nikki Cross or Nikki ASH. Why aren't they getting the opportunity to go on to a pay-per-view and face the champion? Why has it got to be us when we're the tag team champions? It's really, I can see why she's frustrated with it.
Absolutely. And it's a great point as well, though, because Sasha's been someone that's always wanted to put, people always say, like, why is Sasha losing to this person? Why is Sasha lost to this person? Sasha wants to make stars. She wants to put people over. It was probably a really good thing for her to want to put Bianca Belair over in a WrestleMania main event. Like, that's probably why she lost that they wanted to build Bianca as the star. But I reckon Sasha was probably first in line to say, let's make her that star because we've been top of the mountain for so long. Let's help create another one that could be the top of the division.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there was a time where Sasha couldn't even get a win on a pay-per-view. She was just literally, she would lose every pay-per-view match. Like every time she had a title, the first pay-per-view defense, she would lose it. And it was like, whether it's a creative or whether it's Sasha doing that, it just shows how much of a professional she is that she was willing to take those 4 or 5 pay-per-view losses in a row because she knew how much what it would do for the other person and what it would do creatively going forward. But like I said, with the tag team titles, it's different because I think Bailey and Sasha only had it for like a month when she lost it. And I think it was like their first title defense or maybe their second or first on pay-per-view. And it was like, it honestly didn't make sense when they're like, these two have, this is their thing. This is what they wanted. They want to make it a big thing and they want to make it irrelevant. And they're essentially trying to promote women's wrestling. They're trying to do it themselves and get women's wrestling more relevant. And I know there's a lot of it at the minute, especially with like AEW, where people feel that they're not getting enough time on TV and stuff. And they're trying to, like, there was the whole women's pay-per-view, which was a massive thing and was one of their best pay-per-views that year. And they've never done another one since. And it's like, you have this fantastic roster of women's wrestlers and it just feels like you don't want to do anything with them. So they are trying to do it themselves, but it's just not working, unfortunately.
I think that's a perfect way to leave the tone of this video there because you've summed much up there so well at the end there. Why we haven't had an Evolution 2 is beyond me. And obviously, like you say, you can only try so hard for certain things if the establishment isn't going to make these things happen. But that's what we think. That's all of our topics. If you've missed anything of this live stream, then please go back to the start of the video. There's a full in-depth of everything that we thought about with Sasha and Naomi, with the walkout from Raw. Also, our opinions of whether they should scrap the tag team championships or not for the women's division, and also keep an eye out for the community because later this evening or this afternoon, where you are, time zone in the world, I am going to be letting you know what the next video on SCW is going to be dropping in the next couple of days, and I'll give you a small hint. And Steve is going to be a part of it as well. So if you enjoyed him there, you're going to want to check out that video as well. But thank you everyone for your comments and obviously for your questions as well. Also, we're just going to say here, Eagles has said the good stuff and hopefully we might get some inside leak of what's going on. Good show and good Q&A. Thank you very much. And hopefully, yes, there'll be more information. And I'm sure when there is, we're back on here to talk about it once again. But if you could as well, please like this video. Please share with a friend as well. Let them know SCW is here as well. Subscribe if it's your first time. And like I say, have yourselves a great day. Thank you for watching SCW. Thank you to NXT for being on here as always. It's great great to talk pro wrestling with you. And yeah, wish everybody enjoy the rest of your days. And yeah, see you very soon here on SCW. Take care. All the best.